Truth is making a comeback. America's Top Stories with Leesa Donner.
In the wake of several mass shootings during recent weeks and Democrat contenders making political capital out of them, in any normal election cycle, Donald Trump would be taking a beating, but not this time. Despite being pilloried by politicos and the media, President Trump has maintained his 47 to 50% approval rating without much fuss or drama. In fact, he's 3 points ahead of where Barack Obama was at the same time of his presidency. The Teflon Don, indeed. That is the prose of Liberty Nation's managing editor, Mark Angelides. Mark is here to discuss his widely popular article entitled A Democrat Contender Bloodbath. Welcome, sir, to Truth is Making a Comeback.
Thanks for having me on, Lisa.
Well, first of all, there's some interesting news about wall spending, and I'm wondering how that might affect the race.
Well, that's a good question. Obviously, it's the $3.6 billion that President Trump has now moved from other military building projects into building the wall. It's 175 meters of wall. Now, the big thing about this is not so much that he's getting the wall built, but that he's setting the agenda for what the Democrat candidates are now going to have to talk about. Because at the moment, they're either chiming themselves up to be the climate cohiso or the healthcare hero. But now they're going to have to address, do they want a wall? Do they want border security? And really, this is setting up Trump for any 2020 debates between himself and the Democrat nominee, because they're going to have to go on record for what they believe about the wall. And this is great ammunition for President Trump.
We also have some things happening on the GOP side of the race. Can you briefly outline those for us?
Yeah, so there's a couple of people that most people have probably never heard of. Bill Weld, who, you know, if you're around 20 years ago, maybe Bill Weld popped onto your radar, and Joe Walsh have put their hats in the ring for the Republican nomination. Realistically, they have no chance whatsoever. All the betting odds are pointing firmly against them. In fact, amongst Republican voters, President Trump is 95% sure to get, they see President Trump's 95% sure to get the nomination. And that's pretty good odds.
Speaking of DT, what's his approval rating this week and how's it looking?
Well, his approval ratings, oddly enough, they're exactly the same as they have been for the last 6 months to a year. He's floating around 46, 47. And I pointed this out in another TV we did a little while back. But he always seems to be about 2 to 3 points ahead of where Barack Obama was during his term in the same time in his presidency. So, and this was obviously coming up towards his second term, Barack Obama's second term. So, if we look at the approval ratings as an indication of perhaps will the president receive a second term, based on what we saw with Barack Obama, then absolutely Donald Trump is going to get the second term.
So are we also looking at congressional approval around that of the used car salesman?
Oh, I think that's cruel to the used car salesman, to be fair. The Congress is sitting about 18.4% when you do an aggregate of all the latest polls. That would be significantly lower, though, if there was one poll that came out that hit them with I think it was 24% approval, which is, for Congress, that's pretty high, but we can pretty much write that off as an outlier and say that their genuine approval is probably around 15.5%. So they're wildly unpopular. Perhaps the most unpopular in terms of polling for members of Congress is the Squad, who, despite getting many column inches, which you would presume puts them quite high up there in the popularity ratings, they're doing abysmal, really badly.
Well, speaking of the betting odds, let's go to the gamblers. It's always fun to check in with the people who are laying money down on the odds. What say them?
Well, this is the third week now that Elizabeth Warren has been topping the betting odds in the Democratic primary, which is essentially going to put the Biden campaign team into a major tailspin. They're always, the Biden team is always polling at the top in pretty much every race, just for polling. But in terms of betting, and these are people who have skin in the game, this is the third week that Elizabeth Warren has been topping this. And so, yeah, the race is tightening very, very much for the nomination.
And finally, some of the gambling statistics that you had this week. You had something about Trump and Scientology. I thought that was very funny.
Yes, there's some strange betting taking place in the US of A. At the moment, it's 25-1 that President Trump will become a Scientologist, which is kind of fun. And if you really fancy a long shot bet, you can bet $1 and get yourself 150 back if Trump becomes Muslim.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Mark Angelides, managing editor of LibertyNation.com. Keep up the good work, Mr. Angelides, and thank you so much for joining us on Truth Is Making a Comeback.
Truth is making a comeback. Visit us at LibertyNation.com.